Hello and welcome to the Ann Phelim Scoop.
I'm Ann McElhaney.
And I'm Phelim 𝙃𝙀𝙘𝙧.
And it's week 76.
Of what?
Of 1 year and 6 months to flatten of the 2 weeks to flatten the curve lockdown. That's 1.5 years now. 1.5 years. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's a long 2 weeks.
Funny, I don't know where we were yesterday. Oh, I know where we were. We were at the airport or whatever the other day. And I was thinking, when you see people, everyone wearing masks, it's it's amazing. So a year and a half later, you know. I used to always look at those kind of scenes with those Japanese people and think, imagine people all wearing masks. Kind of mad, isn't it? Yeah, a year and a half later. And it's also, by the way, 12 weeks since Hunter Biden used we discovered that Hunter Biden had used the N-word, and the mainstream media have still not mentioned that. And this is the same mainstream media, by the way, who destroyed a young person's life because she'd used the N-word.
Age 14.
Age 14, and it was something to do with a rap song. But anyway, so they took away her college future.
Yes.
But Hunter Biden is in a different category. But we're going to get on to that, actually.
We're going to be talking about Hunter Biden later on in the show.
Yes, and because we have...
we have a tale of two hunters. And then we are also going to interview... it's a great interview. Ed Morrissey from Hot Air,
our friend Ed
to
Morrissey,
talk about Kabul, to talk about politics, to talk about everything, and it'll be very interesting.
And oh my God, well, actually, no, not in Harvard. We'll be looking at how Harvard has turned itself into an actual oxymoron.
Yes, emphasis on the moron. Crazy California, a tale of two gubernatorial candidates. Why isn't it gubernatorial candidates? Why is it gubernatorial?
I don't know, Phelim, but these are questions that we need to ask the people out there.
Okay, Mr. Pedant who wrote to us, someone wrote to us and did actually point out we made a mistake in our email last week. Historical versus historic. I'll talk about that later.
And we appreciate you for
doing that. And we appreciate
that.
But can you tell us why it's gubernatorial, not gubernatorial?
Indeed. And mask madness. How not wearing a mask could actually get you shot, and it's not funny.
Yes.
And we also have a recipe, kind of a very, very simple recipe for when you have people who decide that they're going to come visit you and you're thinking, oh my God, what can I give them? Very nice little simple recipe there. But we want to start, by the way, by looking at a tale of two hunters. Two
people called hunters. I want to tell you the story of two hunters. Hunter Biden was born in Delaware in 1970. Hunter Lopez was born in 1999 on the other side of the country in Indio, California. According to his parents, Hunter Lopez knew what he wanted to do from the age of 10 and started working towards that goal. In 2010, Hunter Lopez realized he wanted to be a Marine and started...
Very focused.
Focused, like he was a young fella. Hunter Biden in 2010, as he wrote about in his memo, he had other goals. Hunter Biden in 2010, when this young boy decided he wanted a Marine, Hunter Biden said in his memoir.
This is how he described what he was thinking about there. He says, and there you are, drinking a bottle of Smirnoff Red every night, making sure before nodding off that you stash the bottle where it won't be found. The next day you don't get up for work, you sleep until 9. When you do show up for work, you don't go to the meeting that you're already late for. Feeling bad about that, you head to the bar. Yeah, so in 2014, aged 44, Hunter Biden used his father's influence to get into the Navy Reserve. He had to get a waiver to get in, because he was old, but also because you're not supposed to get in if you're a drug user, past or present. But no problem to Hunter Biden with his connections. Also in 2014, a young Mr. Hunter Lopez, he joined the Riverside Sheriff's Explorer Scout Group. That's like the scouts for the law enforcement. It's for young people who want to learn about law enforcement. And to get in there, you had to be of good moral character with no arrest or conviction record. Hunter Lopez only left the Sheriff's Scouts 3 years later in 2017 because he went to enlist in the Marines. Hunter Biden's career in the Navy was rather more brief. Biden was drug tested on the first day in the Navy and was thrown out immediately after it was discovered he was high on cocaine. According to his family, Hunter Lopez was determined to become a Marine, and that's all he wanted to do. Meanwhile, Hunter Biden dedicated his life to making money from his family name. He received $86,000 a month working for a Ukrainian energy company, even though he wasn't qualified. He received $3 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife for consultancy.
He received gifts, hundreds of thousands of dollars of gifts from Chinese businessmen. He was on the board of a Chinese investment fund. He saw public service one way. Hunter Lopez saw it another. In 2017, Hunter Biden was on his way from Los Angeles to yet another rehab facility. This one was in Sonoma, New Mexico, which he had heard about when he was in his last rehab in Tijuana, Mexico. High on cocaine, Hunter Biden drove past Palm Springs approaching Indio, where a young Hunter Lopez had just enlisted in the Marines. In his memoir, Biden described falling asleep, crossing the brush-filled meridian and driving into incoming traffic, spinning out of control, ending up facing against incoming traffic on the far side. Biden managed not to have the accident reported to the police, so possibly avoiding interactions with Hunter Lopez's parents, who basically ran law enforcement in the area. Meanwhile, as Hunter Biden was crisscrossing the area, going from one rehab to another, Hunter Lopez was delighted to be assigned to the 2nd Battalion 1st Marines, where he would go to serve with distinction. Now, in the next few weeks, Hunter Biden is going to have a series of private showings of his art at posh galleries in Los Angeles and New York. The paintings are apparently going to fetch up to $500,000 apiece, an unprecedented amount for an artist with no track record or artistic history. Some observers are alleging it's just another way for the corrupt and powerful to make donations to the Biden family. I don't know what Hunter Lopez would have thought of Hunter Biden's art. He probably wouldn't have been invited to the exhibitions and to the private gatherings, but if he had been, Hunter Lopez won't be able to go to any of these events. Hunter was killed last week defending Americans and their allies from a vicious enemy with mass murder and hatred of America in their hearts. He was blown to pieces trying to help people to flee a barbaric enemy. These people believed America's promises. Hunter Lopez was put in harm's way by Hunter Biden's father, President Joe Biden, who botched the troop and civilian evacuation, leaving Hunter Lopez and his colleagues vulnerable to attack. Hunter Biden's father, Joe, is of course the President of the United States. Hunter Lopez's father, Herman, commands the Coachella Valley's thermal sheriff's station. Hunter Lopez's mother, Alicia, is a sheriff's deputy. She was the recipient of the Rick Espinosa Distinguished Service Award in 2017 after she gave a kidney to a young boy who needed a transplant. Joe Biden has described Hunter Biden as, "He's the smartest man I know." Hunter Lopez's family took some time this weekend to describe the Hunter they knew. They described a man who was focused and had a clear career path. As they said, he wanted to be a Marine since he was 10 years old. Then, when his tour was completed, he wanted to follow his father and mother and join the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. He wanted to be a SWAT officer. He was a badass Marine and a great brother and an awesome son, they told NBC. The Lopez family don't want flowers. They most certainly do not want money. They have asked that instead of sending flowers to the family, mourners instead send the money to a charity, the Riverside County Deputy Sheriff Relief Foundation, which helps the families of fallen police officers. Two hunters, two families who have been in public service. It seems that only one of those families know what that really means.
It's been obviously an awful time for people, and it's just so upsetting to look at the photographs of these really beautiful young people whose lives have been lost. And I think the reason people are so upset, obviously any time there is a death of a young person, it's terrible. But I think what's really hurting people now is the fact that people are so conscious of how unnecessary it was, how botched this evacuation was, what a complete disaster it was, and that these lives have been lost in vain in a way. You know, the people should have been able to continue to help the people there, help in the evacuation and make the evacuation successful. Instead of that, they were the victims of a suicide bomber. And the photographs are just horrific. Looking at the photographs of these beautiful young people, the lovely 23-year-old beautiful girl who holding the baby. I mean, we've all seen those photographs over the weekend. And all the young men, such fine, fine young people. And that Joe Biden, you know, and everybody else, by the way, responsible for making these incredible decisions that left these people in this position.
And let's not forget, you know, maybe 200 Afghanis who died also, men, women and children, who trusted America and who trusted America's word that they would look after them. And so what America's word is worth now.
It's unbelievable. We're going to go over now to talk to Ed Morrissey a little bit more about this, our friend Ed Morrissey from Hot Air. We'll go to that interview now.
So Ed Morrissey is, I think you could call him as one of the founding fathers of American blogging. And he's also sometimes a dinner guest in the McAleer-McElhinney household.
Not often enough.
Not often enough. He wrote, I think he started his original blog, Captain's Quarters, from October, from about 2003. You were known as Captain Ed, and you're the current editor of Hot Air, and which is, you know, kind of a repository for all you need to know about politics in America today. He's also one of the few American journalists to have probably influenced the Canadian election. So welcome to the show, Ed.
Phelim and Ann, it's great talking to you. You guys are like my favorite couple in new media, and I agree. You have a lovely place, and we were so pleased to be able to enjoy your hospitality there. And the next time we're in California, we've got to do it again. But man, we do miss you.
Yeah.
Well, talking about geography, you've moved recently, I believe. What? Tell us about that.
I've moved to Central Texas, and I don't get too much more specific than that publicly, okay. But it's a nice area. We really enjoy this. It wasn't really political. It was more financial and weather related and health related, just trying to get out of multiple level living, get out of 6 months of winter every year.
Yeah. So you were, just to be clear, you were in Minnesota beforehand.
Yeah.
And, it has certain politics, and now you're in Texas, which is other politics. But
also, as you say, it's a lot about the weather too.
Yes, yeah,
that's fair enough. I can definitely understand that.
Politics were sort of tertiary, right? But I mean, one of the reasons why we picked Texas is it doesn't have a state income tax, so that's sort of a nice little raise when you're coming from a state like Minnesota. It's like giving yourself a raise every year, and so that's good. And yeah, I mean, I think that the politics and culture are probably a little bit more amenable here to us than Minnesota was, but the people in Minnesota were lovely, and we enjoyed that too. But 23 years of those winters and living in a 4-level house for 23 years, it looks really good when you're in your 40s, but when you're pushing 60,
yes,
I really just won't. I don't want stairs. I want no more stairs in my life if I can imagine it. So
very smart.
That was also
very smart. Yeah, we don't need stairs. Yeah, we need ranch style dwellings.
Yes, ranch style dwellings for all. That's the new. If you run for that, run for office on that, you'll get the over 60 vote, no problem. So I suppose we want to talk about the politics of the day. I mean, Hot Air has been all over Kabul, all over everything that's going on. What are your thoughts on the evacuation? After we've had day after day of madness now.
We've had day after day of sadness as well. I mean, Phelim and I just came from Texas, and actually seeing all the flags at half staff, and I saw people have put out. I thought it was a really, unique kind of memorial where in pubs and restaurants they put out 13 glasses of beer and had a reserved table. Very, very sad images these last days. What are your thoughts?
I think it's a national disgrace. I think what's happening in Afghanistan is a national disgrace. I didn't think I'd ever live to see the day where an American government would abandon American citizens behind terrorist lines. And that's exactly what's happening in Afghanistan. I mean, even apart from the idea that we're abandoning our allies, in a place where you could make an argument for exiting after 20 years. I mean, we're never going to settle the underlying civil war there. The Taliban or the Pashtun. The Pashtun are a dominant tribe in Afghanistan, and they're always at war with the other tribes there. But to do it in the manner that we did it, and to have not evacuated our own citizens, legal residents, green card holders, permanent visa holders that were working for us on our mission in Afghanistan, to just leave them behind in the way that we did is a national disgrace. I can't even think of a parallel in American history to it.
I mean, it's almost wrong to do this, to talk about it politically, because it's such a tragedy, especially after 13 soldiers died. But how do you think this will play out politically for Biden and for Trump, actually, and for the Republicans? I mean, we're both old enough to remember the Obama years when you would turn on Fox News and it was, Obama will never survive this. Obama will never. I remember all those, and I believed them. And then we put Romney up against him, and he survived it okay.
Yeah, he did all right, huh?
He did all right. So, I mean, literally, I stopped watching Fox News. Most people say I don't watch Fox. I really stopped watching Fox News, religiously after the 2012 election, because I was watching them going, Obama's just ordered Dijon mustard on his burger. He'll lose the Midwest vote. And, it was
he wore a tan suit. He wore a tan suit to the podium. Remember?
Yeah. So I sorry, I don't want to. I mean, it's worse than I don't want to. There was all these things that Obama did, right? And we were told that this was going to count against him in the election, and it didn't. So this is obviously much, much worse, and so much more of that. This is a historic failure. This is going on and on. It's not a one-day hit. It's a national wound that just is not healing for weeks now, and looks like it will go on. So is this fatal to the Biden project, or will it be forgotten in 3 years' time when the elections come along?
It's a great question, because I have the same reservations you have. I remember sitting in Hugh Hewitt's studio on election night in 2012, convinced Romney had the thing won. In fact, I wrote a book about it. It was like, how did we get this so wrong? And I ended up wrote a book about it. How That's we got it so wrong. The book is called Going Red. Is that right? Going Red, yeah. And I mean, that's the prologue to is me sitting in the studio with Hugh Hewitt, watching the returns come in, and just getting this feeling. We had a party set up. Like, we had champagne over in our apartment because Romney was going to win. Yeah. By 9. By the way, it was over by 9 o'clock. People don't remember this, or maybe they choose to forget.
It was over before it started.
It was over before it started. It wasn't like, oh, it went down to the wire. No, it was over by 9.
I want to hear Ed's answer to that question, though, because it is incredible. What do you think is going to happen?
So this is different, right? I mean, Obama did things that we disagreed with, but he never left Americans behind the lines. And I think that this is much different. And I think it's going to be a lot different. I mean, even the withdrawal from Iraq, right, which we ended up having to reverse. He withdrew from Iraq in 2011 and got some political boost out of that because he had promised to do that and followed through on his promise. And we ended up having to go back in 2014 because of the fact that we'd pulled out and let ISIS, fill a vacuum out there. And we had abandoned our allies. We'd abandoned the Sunni chieftains out there that we had made deals with to prevent ISIS or Al-Qaeda in Iraq, as it was known at the time, from reconstituting itself. And we were supposed to be their interlocutors with the government in Baghdad. I mean, it was a disaster, but it was a disaster that was more or less not connected to Americans' sense of identity. This has the potential of dragging on for years as Americans behind the lines have to try to get out, contact their families, have to be rescued, or God forbid, be hostaged or killed, on television by the terrorists that we've abandoned them to. I mean, this is a huge, huge political problem for the White House, and I don't think that they are grasping the scope or the breadth of the disaster that they've set themselves up for. They really needed to leave the military in place until they got those citizens, at least the American citizens, out and the green card holders out. So you don't have the opportunity. I mean, I was 16 years old when the Iranian hostage crisis erupted in 1979. And I mean, I still remember that as a particular humiliation for the United States. And that lasted 444 days. And that killed the Jimmy Carter project, to put it in your terms. And that was only 54 Americans. I mean, we're talking about maybe hundreds or thousands of Americans that are going to be at risk here because we couldn't get them to the airport, because we had bailed out of Kabul and then had to send 5,500 troops only to the airport to try to get out whoever we could. And this is a disaster all the way down the line. It's an ill-conceived plan for an ill-conceived withdrawal. And there's a new ABC Ipsos poll out this morning, or late last night, I think it was, that showed that 84% of Americans were opposed to leaving Afghanistan until all the American citizens are out. And that was almost identical in all three political demos: Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. This is the type of consensus that you get for apple pie, right? I mean, or baseball, not a political question. This is a huge, huge, huge disaster for Biden. And frankly, I think that I didn't think he was going to run for a second term anyway, but this more or less cinches it. And I think he is going to go down as perhaps one of the worst presidents we've ever had, if not maybe the worst. Just on this basis alone, you don't leave Americans in enemy hands. You don't bail out of some place. You don't send the military away.
Well, can I just say, that's very old-fashioned of you, Ed. You see, no. I mean, you don't. If you believe in America, if you believe in Americans, if you believe in the idea of nationalism, right? If you believe in the idea of a country and a people and citizens, and that there's a difference between citizens and non-citizens, and you just can't become a citizen by walking over the border. If you believe all those, and if you believe in borders, then you don't leave Americans behind. But if you believe we're all the same, if you believe that somebody who flies from, Pakistan and they arrive in America, that makes them American, and we have to give them all the benefits of an American citizen, then getting American citizens out is not the priority. I mean, the great nationalist project is about protecting your citizens, is about America first. If you don't believe in America first, then why would you get Americans out first?
It's not a bad point, Phelim, and I agree with you on that. But I mean, I think clearly, even people who would normally be more or less globalists, I mean, when you got 80% or so of Democrats, I forget what the exact percentage was. It was somewhere north of 75% of Democrats saying, no, you need to get the Americans out first. I mean, I think it may even be more basic than that, right? And here's I just got to throw this in here because I just think that this is so craven. The State Department is trying to make a distinction here. They're saying, well, we only think that there may be as many as 1,500 Americans that are still left in Kabul. One is bad enough, right? But what they're doing with those numbers is they're not counting people who are legal residents of the United States, people who have green cards, right? People who admitted to be permanent residents of the United States, and other than voting and running for office, well, for federal office anyway, have all the rights privileges of American citizens. Mm-hmm. And they're deliberately excluding this class of people in order to make their numbers look not quite as bad as they otherwise would, which I think is just absolutely cowardly, reprehensible, and sick. And I mean, I'm not usually given to those types of
I know. Yep.
But this is a case in a league of its own. I mean, I've never seen anything like this before. I've never even thought to see anything like this. We got out of Saigon better than we did that we were doing right now.
I have another question. You talk about this being an abject failure of the Biden administration. Is this not also an abject failure on behalf of the intelligence services and on behalf of the higher ups on every division of security for the United States, where all of this, obviously there's all the human life that is behind enemy lines now, but then on top of that, there's $85 million estimated, billion dollars worth of equipment. And I'm like, I almost feel like, I don't want to make a joke of anything here, but I mean, like Jeff Bezos wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of Amazon products not getting to customers. Let's even put it as simple as that. Right. Like if they put Jeff Bezos in charge, and I have nothing good to say about him, I wouldn't think there'd be anything left there. It'd be in a warehouse somewhere in a friendly country. Like, what does that tell us? Because it scares me. It's scary that there are helicopters there, huge numbers of helicopters there, of aircraft, of arms, light arms and heavier arms. I mean, how is that even I don't even know how that's possible. How is it not even possible that you have all these pilots in America? You say, okay, tomorrow, and for the next 10, just everyone going, we want to pick all those things that be flown out to Germany or to somewhere else. Right. What am I missing here?
Well, you're missing the fact that nobody planned for this. I mean, this is a failure at every level, right? I mean, the way that you withdraw is you move your materiel out. If you're doing a withdrawal, you move your materiel out. If you're doing a retreat, that's something else. And if it's a rout, which this is, then that's even worse. But if you're planning a withdrawal, the first thing you do is you move your materiel out. And I would point out, by the way, that among these, I believe is somewhere around 373,000 automatic personal arms, right? Long rifles from a government that wants to impose gun control on Americans. They've just handed the Taliban 373,000 machine guns, and military grade machine guns. And that's just the one little thing. And
Can I just say too, when the troubles were on, the IRA in Northern Ireland, the IRA would go to Iraq, they would go to Palestine, they would go. So there's all these terrorist organizations now establishing contacts with the Taliban to buy these military grade machine guns from them. So this is going to have ripple effects. This is. I mean, the IRA got 150 tons of armaments, 200 tons of explosives, Semtex from Gaddafi, because he had it.
Helped in no part by a bunch of morons in American bars that were kicking into the kitty back in the 70s and 80s. By the way, just I gotta throw that in there because
yes, Mr. Morrissey. Okay, Mr. Morrissey.
What do they?
This is me off no end.
What's the Republicans' response to all of this incompetence? What fabulous moves are people like the great Andrew McCarthy going to do? What's his name?
Andy McCarthy. McCarthy. I mean, and this ties into a question I have is, what are the Republicans doing, and how can Joe Biden stop this from being fatal? What can they do? Do they understand? I don't even think they understand that it's fatal.
I think you're wrong about that. I think that the Republicans they won't make it fatal for them.
To some extent, I think calling for impeachment or especially calling for resignation. I've always thought that was sort of a dumb thing to do. I mean, you certainly call for Lloyd Austin to resign, certainly call for Jake Sullivan to resign. That's fine. Joe Biden's not going to resign, and it makes you look impotent if that's where you draw the line, right?
It also makes you look stupid, and you don't understand the Constitution. You don't understand the real world. I mean, it just makes you look, stupid.
Makes you look out of touch. Makes you look stupid. It's simply performative.
Yeah.
You're not going to impeach him either, at least not in this session of Congress, because Democrats simply aren't going to impeach him. And even if they did, they're not going to remove him. The other thing, too, is you hear people we need to discuss the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment doesn't get invoked by Congress. The 25th Amendment gets invoked either by a vice president or a cabinet. It doesn't get invoked by Congress. Congress doesn't have any role in that except to navigate a dispute between a president and a vice president when the 25th Amendment has been invoked. I mean, it's like these people never even bothered to read the Constitution that they've sworn to uphold and defend.
Or watched every TV series or Air Force One, the movie. I mean, every movie about the presidency has this thing about the 25th Amendment, and they go over what the Constitution is. I even know what it is, and it's not because I studied the Constitution. It's because I've watched Air Force One, I've watched The West Wing, I've watched,
Look at my husband. He's so well read.
No, President Bartlett, his daughter was kidnapped, and he invoked his own kind of 25th Amendment. And in Air Force One, they were saying the president was being held hostage, so therefore they were going to invoke a coup against him, and the vice president was saying no. Unlike this vice president that we have now, that vice president Glenn Close was against overthrowing the president.
Okay. Yes. Obscure references to movies we're not going to do. Can I? One thing that
I like his obscure references to movies.
It's not that obscure.
Does this put to bed forever the notion that wasn't it great that we got rid of Trump because now we've got the grown-ups in charge? Is that dead now? Does that never get said again? And
it's dead.
It's dead, right?
It's completely dead. It's completely dead, and the reason why is not so much because of what's going on in Kabul, but because of what's going on in Europe. They're furious over this. I mean, it wasn't just the Americans that got abandoned behind the lines. It was European citizens that got abandoned.
And soldiers, right?
Yeah. They're furious at us.
Yeah.
And I don't think that our standing in NATO is ever going to recover. I don't think our standing with the EU is ever going to recover. They may have disliked Donald Trump intensely for some reasons, good or otherwise, but Joe Biden has basically completely demolished our ability to function as a world leader. And whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, he never did that. I mean, he made it very clear that we were going to lead, and they were going to have to, kick into the kitty a little bit more than they had been if they wanted us to remain in that position. Now they're trying to figure out how they can get rid of us.
Yeah.
After this debacle.
Sorry, Ed. I seem to hear some interference there. There seems to be oh no. It's the sound of absolute quiet from the Never Trumpers. Sorry, I was just so surprised. I knew there was some sound effect.
Hearing something.
Yeah, I was hearing.
It's an echo film.
It's a lack of an echo. What's a lack of an echo?
It's like the sound of a vacuum.
The sound of silence.
It's the sound of silence. Oh, that's what you're hearing.
Yes.
You're hearing the sound of silence from the Never Trumpers. Yeah. Where's Bill Kristol when you need him?
Mr. Neocon.
He's trying to spin how this is actually going to be a long-term win for the United States, just like some of the people in the Democrats. I'm sure I haven't read Bill Kristol in a while, but I'm sure that's what they're trying to spin. This is either that or they're trying to argue that Donald Trump is the one who set all this in motion by negotiating with the Taliban in the first place. Again, you can make a good argument for the U.S. leaving Afghanistan. You can also make a good argument for them staying at the force level that we were at the end of the Trump presidency, which was about 2,500 soldiers with a full logistical and intelligence support for the Afghan army, which seemed to be working as long as we kept it there. So you can make a good argument either way, but what you can't make an argument for at all is the ass backwards way in which we withdrew from Afghanistan, which was military first, which I don't know if there's ever been a withdrawal from an area that has said, screw the women and children, let's get the soldiers out first and leave and children behind. I mean,
very Democrat, that actually, very Democrat.
God, I guess heard anyone say that. That's an incredible point. Let's get the army out first. Women and children, stay behind there now. Yeah. Stay behind.
School teachers, people teaching English,
in remote villages.
Yeah, you stay there, and we'll
medieval villages.
Yeah, we'll call you. Don't call us. Listen, I know Ed has to go soon, so we have
2 extra questions.
We ask all
our guests, and the first one is we ask them if they cook. What do they cook, and what are they famous for in their house?
I'm famous for burning things in my house. Actually, no. I like to grill. And so I love doing the steaks. I just got a smoker actually last week. And over the weekend, I cooked my very first meal, cooked some beef ribs on the smoker, and it turned out great. So I'm known to be the backyard chef. And so I'm looking forward to doing all sorts of different things. But my favorite thing to cook is steaks and that sort of thing.
That's very good, though. Of course, he moves to Texas, you see, and the next thing he gets a smoker. Isn't that? I'm all about it, by the way. I'll be right there with you. And you know what? You can smoke fish as well. Imagine that, you could smoke fish.
I'm actually going to do salmon on Friday, so I will be smoking up a salmon on Friday. And by the way, you guys are invited, so come on over.
No, I'm telling you. Listen, our people need to talk to your people. We've just come back from Texas, actually. But the other question that we ask people is: have they a piece of art, poetry, a sculpture, a movie, anything that speaks to them and inspires them that they'd like to tell everyone about?
There's all sorts of different art that inspires me. I'm not sure that there's a particular piece of art. I love movies, and so when Phelim was talking about movies earlier, I was like, "Oh yeah, this is my jam." I can talk about movies all day long. I love Renaissance art, Renaissance, Baroque, even Impressionists. Anything after that, I'm kind of not too big a fan of. But
so you're not a fan of the Hunter Biden movement in art, no?
Not particularly. I'm not a big Basquiat fan. Just none of that modern art really speaks to me. But I do the Sunday reflections at Hot Air, Sunday Gospel Reflections, and I usually try to find a really good piece of art that is at least somewhat related to whatever the topic is at hand. And you go to Wikimedia Commons has a lot of great stuff on there. WikiArt has a lot of great stuff that's licensed for for general use, and I try to stick with that because I don't want to intrude on anybody's copyrights. But I got to tell you that my biggest response to a Sunday reflection was actually yesterday's, and it was because the piece of art I chose for it was the Big Lebowski's Walter Sobchak holding a pistol. Yeah. And I'm sure that people were going, what the hell does the Big Lebowski have to do with the gospel reflection? And apparently a whole bunch of people decided that they wanted to check that out. So maybe I should do that. Maybe I should do the movie references a little bit more often. I love the Big Lebowski, by the way. That's one of my favorite movies.
I love
answer that question.
Phelim and I don't agree on the what are they called?
On the Big Lebowski.
On those guys. What are they called?
The Coen brothers.
The Coen brothers. Well, we don't agree on the Coen, but I want to just ask. I'm curious because I'm sure everyone else is too. What was the gospel reflection that inspired you to put that image up?
I mean, it was fun because it was one of the times when Jesus is contending with the Pharisees over the rules, and in this particular gospel reading, it was the rules about washing hands and purification before eating, and the Pharisees were basically challenging Jesus because his disciples weren't following it to the jot and tittle, right? And he said, these people worship me with their lips, but not with their hearts, and talks about how, the law is meant to serve people, not to condemn people. And so there's this great scene in The Big Lebowski where one of the bowlers, Smokey, gets an 8 for the frame, but his toe apparently goes over the line, and Walter Sobchak wants it to be a 0. And when Smokey objects to it, he pulls a pistol out and says, "You're entering a world of pain."
Very good.
And he says, "Am I the only one who cares about the rules?"
It could be applied to the pandemic as well, by the way.
Yeah.
We just saw a story. We just saw a story over the weekend, actually, where a guy, not funny at all, actually, a man in a store in Chicago shot 3 times, put 3 bullets into a customer who wouldn't put a mask on. We're actually
and it's claiming self-defense.
And it's claiming self-defense, said that the person who wouldn't put the mask on was putting everyone's lives at danger. So three bullets, including one when the person had managed to get out of the store, she came out and continued shooting.
That's quite a lot. That's a lot of self-defense.
That's very Chicago, though.
Yes.
But listen, we've come to the end of the interview, and we're aware of the fact that you need to go, which is sad.
I'll just say one quick thing about that. I'm pretty familiar with the laws of self-defense, and that is not going to fly. That is not at all going to fly.
Yeah, it's funny. The judge agreed with you, actually, and denied bail and denied all kinds of everything because what an awful bloody story. But there's a lot of madness out there. So let's stay sane. And I'm really glad you're in Texas. And our people need to talk to your people because we love going to Texas. And as I said, we're driving around Texas over the weekend. We just went on Saturday and came back on Sunday. And I remember I said to Phelim a number of times, "Isn't it lovely here?
Yes.
It's lovely here."
With that voice.
With that voice. And then we met all these lovely people. And it's like, I could live beside these lovely people. I'd like to live near these people. These are lovely people.
Well, then we need to talk. We need to talk soon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk geography here.
Thank you very much, Ed. And
thank you very much. And we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye. So that was a great interview there with Ed. It's
brilliant.
A pity he had to rush off. I could have talked to him for another half hour or more.
I think we will have to speak to him a lot longer.
I wish to draw attention to the fact that I am not an anti-Coen brothers bigot, right?
What are you then?
I'm anti-Coen brothers because of their specific actions, as in making bad movies. Especially
The Big Lebowski is a great movie.
It is not. It has not stood the test of time. It is actually unwatchable today.
Okay, let's try it.
Controversial statement.
I'll watch it with you. We'll see. I could watch it.
And don't get me started about Fargo. Oh, look at her. She's pregnant and she's got a funny accent. Who cares? What's about the story? Man abducts someone or doesn't abduct someone, and
you do know, Phelim, that you're in the minority on this one, right?
No, I'm not actually.
Oh, really?
They're a minority interest. Most Americans have never heard of the Coen brothers.
Okay,
most Americans couldn't name you a Coen brother.
I want to
movie.
move on to something else that actually could be a plot almost. It could be almost a plot line in a Coen brothers film.
That's true.
I wanted to ask Phelim to define oxymoron. No, don't bother, Phelim. It's okay because actually Harvard has defined it for us, any of them themselves. So Harvard's new chaplain is an atheist. And he's good without God.
And in fact, he's the president. I'm just reading here. He's the president of the chaplains.
Of course he is.
Yes.
So he's the spirit. This spiritual leader doesn't need a higher power. This is all from the New York Post, but it's everywhere. Harvard University's organization of chaplains is getting a new president to coordinate the campus's Christian, Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, and other assorted religious communities. Only the new president, 44-year-old Greg Epstein, does not identify with any of those traditional religions himself. He is an atheist. Despite his disbelief in any higher power, Harvard chaplains felt Epstein, author of the book Good Without God, What a Billion Non-Religious People Do Believe, was a good choice for the position was a good position due to young people's increasing lack of religiosity.
Can I just say, if you have a lack of religiosity, you're an atheist. You don't need a chaplain. You need, you need a friend. You need a therapist. Whatever you need. Don't pretend that that's religious. I mean, and then he says, there's a rising group of people who no longer identify with any religious tradition, but still experience a need for conversation and support what it means to be a good human and live an ethical life. Well, join the ethical society then.
That's right.
Or join
the humanist society. Which I think he is the humanist society president already.
Well, fine, but he's not a chaplain. He should not be a chaplain. Anyway, talk about from crazy Harvard to crazy California.
Crazy California. We just thought this was fabulous.
As people know or may not know, we are facing a recall election quite shortly. Not facing, we're enjoying the recall election.
Yes.
Where
Gavin Gruesome
Newsom has been recalled.
He's facing a recall.
But to get a recall, you have to get 12% of the signatures of the electorate. And we had lunch with someone recently, and they made a very good point. The people who gathered those signatures
are rock stars.
But there were women. We met them all.
Yeah.
And they were at it for years. They were trying to get this recall together for years. And you'd be out and somebody say, would you sign the recall? This woman would come up to you and say, would you sign the recall Newsom campaign? And you'd kind of roll your eyebrows. God help her.
She hasn't a clue.
She hasn't a clue. This will never work, right?
And she was right.
And they were right. And this was hundreds, perhaps thousands of women. And it was all women. And they would sit outside Ralph's and get abuse. They would sit outside Albertsons and get abuse. And they would, remember we were down there at a restaurant in Huntington Beach.
I was going to say.
And they were doing the tables.
Oh yeah, and they were very nice. And of course the other thing about them was they were a very specific kind of woman.
Yeah.
Really polite.
Yeah.
Quite often middle-aged. And they would come up and they would go to like in that case of that Huntington Beach place, went to the owner of the restaurant and said, would you mind, I've got the petition here,
Yeah.
And then they went table to table, all very, very polite.
But everyone kind of rolled their eyebrows at them and rolled their eye, whatever. Oh God, this is crazy. And they succeeded. They succeeded in a political revolution in California. And you know what? None of them were asked to run.
Oh, that's a good one.
All the Republicans who run are Cox, Faulkner, all these old establishment, white, middle-aged, I don't mean that in the way it sounds, but it's like the old establishment.
As a white middle-aged man,
as a white middle-aged man, we're good for something, but I'm not sure that if women organised the recall again, and by the way, Faulkner, Cox, and to a certain extent Larry Elder, I'm sure, not one of them manned a table ever and got one signature.
Well, I'm sure we're
for the recall
people,
election.
I wonder, will we have people writing in and saying to us that actually we were wrong about
Well,
that?
I would think there'd be photographs out there of him, of any of these candidates going door to door or sitting outside Albertsons on a Saturday afternoon trying to get people to sign.
Because actually, that's the hard job of politics, is that door to door, that retail, what they call retail
California.
politics.
Retail politics
really tough
in California. It's almost impossible.
But it's almost like, and those people, those women, as you say, that went out and got those signatures, they're also the kind of people. These are the people who did the Tea Party. And by the way, no think tank came up with the idea of the Tea Party. That was people taking control themselves of doing something that was not being done in any centralized way up in Washington or anywhere else.
Yeah. So
anyway,
we want to talk.
We want to go on. This is a little, actually, this is kind of like an exercise for you, Phelim, actually, because this is like journalism. This is like journalism 101. If there were, if you were to have, because there shouldn't be a journalism school anymore because it's all nonsense. These journalism schools are complete nonsense. And we'll prove it to you. We'll prove it to you right now. So here's all the most respectable journalism, mainstream media outlets. Journalism's talking about Andrew Gillum's campaign in Florida. So Andrew Gillum, African American, went was a challenger to become a governor in Florida.
Yeah.
And of course, progressive, as they call it, progressive, a big lefty. So here's what look at these headlines. Look at these headlines.
And this is just to give it some context. The favorite to if Newsom is recalled, the favorite to win will be Loury Elder, an African American.
So here's what they said about an African American in Florida running for office as a governor inside Andrew Gillum's campaign to become Florida's first black governor. Oh, how wonderful. And then look at another one. USA Today, Florida gubernatorial candidate poised to make history, and other takeaways from Tuesday's elections. And then look at this as The Guardian. I recognize the font. Andrew Gillum, the progressive, vying to be Florida's first black governor. Oh, how fabulous. The mayor of Tallahassee saw off better funded rivals to become the Democratic nominee and now has his sights on Trump and the Republicans.
Andrew who?
Andrew Gillum. Exactly. Andrew Gillum could be poised to make history in the gubernatorial bid. So all these,
history. As a very kind commentator wrote to us in an email during the week, it's very important to know the difference between historical and historic.
Oh, we got it
wrong. We sent out an email, and I edited that email, and it's to my. I have a degree in English, and I study journalism.
The ones with degrees in English are always the worst.
And I take it very seriously, and I did not spot. Someone else wrote it, but I did not spot the difference between that something is historic. Historical's in the past, historic's in the future.
I really wanted to back end all of those headlines and then show you the headline from one of the latest Los Angeles Times. Loury Elder is the black face of white supremacy. You've been warned.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, these people have no shame.
Yeah, so
I remember
just to remind you, Andrew Gillum could be poised to make history in gubernatorial bid, progressive bride to be first black governor, just history, and then Loury Elder, could be the governor of California. Like that is
it's huge.
It's huge, and he's from Compton. Like he is from the South Central. He is from the hood.
And how do you how can you try to insult this man? You call him the black face of white supremacy. Like this is really terrible. It's a really But anyway, these are just terrible, terrible people. And we mentioned this story earlier, by the way, and I just want to with Ed. I want to go back to it. This extraordinary story. I'm showing a photograph of this dreadful man. A liquor store security guard was acting in self-defense, he says, when he shot a customer 3 times because the customer was putting others' lives at risk by not wearing a COVID mask. The guard's private defense attorney said during a bond court hearing on Wednesday. The argument did not, this is of course back in Chicago, the argument did not sway Cook County Judge. This is the
local newspaper reporting this, yes.
The argument did not sway Cook County Judge Mary
Marubio.
The victim fled the store. Wait till you hear this. I mean, this is the bit I was mentioning to Ed. The victim fled the store, fell outside, followed by the defendant, who, according to the surveillance video, shot a second time. The defendant then paces back and forth and shot a third time. Marubio said before ordering 42-year-old Chester Holmes held without bail.
Yeah, Chester.
That seems like, Chester,
Yeah, I don't think that... that is really meets the level of self-defense.
No, it does not. Does not.
I mean, but this is it. It's now kind of open season. If you don't wear a mask, you saw what happened to that couple on the American Airlines flight. The mask slipped below their nose. We'll put the Twitter chain up.
Yeah, Molly Hemingway retweeted this thread, and it's an extraordinary thread I read on the plane yesterday, where, this customer on an American Airlines flight witnessed a couple coming on into business class, behaving very civilly, very correctly. But as they put their bags up, the woman's mask fell just below her nose. The air hostess became completely irate, completely over the top, and berated her. The lady apologized, put the mask up, whatever, and all that kind of thing. And then the mask slipped again or whatever. And again, the guy witnessing this, and if you read the exchange, you'd really understand the kind of people we're dealing with. Very civil, very quiet. They were extremely apologetic, pulled the masks up. Not enough at all for this airline stewardess who wanted them to wear a particular kind of mask that she had for them. And they said, no, we want to wear our own masks. She then ordered them off the plane. Yeah. They said they wouldn't go and that they hadn't done anything wrong. And then they disembarked. The whole plane was disembarked.
Yeah. And this guy said he went up to when the couple were complaining to the manager there, he went up and said, I support them fully. I saw it all. And then another guy from business class came up and said exactly the same.
People witnessed it and realized that these people were very civil people. But then apparently some of the other airline stewards on the plane said that this woman was the other woman, an American, was out of control.
Yes.
But anyway,
so I mean, this is they're now declaring open season if you don't want to vaccinate. They're declaring open season if you don't want to wear a mask. You know, your rights are being trampled upon because you won't follow the herd. You know, this is just a small example of it.
So 2 more things before we come to the end, and it remind me, Phelim, I want to mention Bill Maher at the very end, but the next thing is the recipe, and we're going to, the simplest recipe. As we said, we were away, we were in Texas, and we were traveling, and I came back and I thought, oh God, what am I going to do for the recipe this week? And actually, you know, I have never made deviled eggs, and you know something super simple, and if you suddenly have company and you think, what am I going to produce for these people? Deviled eggs are really easy and really, really nice. And for anyone who, and we have a little, there's a nice trick involved in this, which it's not my original trick, but I had read it on the interwebs. So obviously boil up your eggs. Then I throw in normally a bunch of ice once they've been cooked and let them cool down. Then peel those eggs the best you can. We had one fatality, didn't we, Phelim? In the middle of the peeling of the eggs. Then you want to scoop out the yolk and put that into a bowl. You'll see me scooping out all the yolks. And then, you know, and I would actually not be too strict about the proportions here. More mayonnaise than Dijon mustard. I had about 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise, a small amount of Dijon mustard. I was having difficulty getting it out of that little container there, but, you know, put about a spoon of Dijon mustard, a few dashes of Tabasco, and of course Tabasco, McElhenny's, spelt differently than my name, unfortunately, which is a tragedy that my father never really recovered from. Yes. Well, unfortunately, we're not related to the Tabasco family, who are a wonderful dynasty, still exist in Louisiana. And by the way, I went one time and booked into a hotel and they said, oh, McElhenny, that's a familiar name around here. And I'm like, what? Really? I've never heard that before. And of course, it was up the road from the McElhennys, which I'd love to go to. We should go to
there.
We should totally go there.
It's one of the few 5-generation companies still existing.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic. So a few dashes of Tabasco, and again, that's to your taste, right? And then the other thing that I think is a great trick here was I did bacon. I think you want a crunchy element to your deviled eggs. I really think you want that crunchy element. So what I did was, and here's a great trick, by the way, if any of you don't know this, and you know where I got this trick from? I got this trick from our dear friend, dearly departed, Paul Bender. If you want to cook bacon really fast, just grab a couple of slices of bacon and lay it out and put it on kitchen paper, sort of wrap it up basically in kitchen paper, put it in the microwave and cook it for about two minutes. Have a look at it, then put it in for more if you want. Be careful because it'll end up super cooked very quickly. The great thing with this as well, from a health point of view, is that it's going to soak up all the oil from the bacon, and it'll make the bacon super crispy, which is exactly what I wanted for this recipe. Then cut that up nice and small. See how small I had it cut up there. And then I had spring onions. Really, you should have chives for the delicacy. But again, I kind of liked the bigness of the chives.
Yes.
Or I should say the spring onions. So chop on your spring onions. So then throw all that into your bowl. Mix that all up together. You see how I've mixed it up together. Oh, don't forget, of course, pepper and salt into your mixture. Pepper and salt in your mixture. I forgot to tell you that. Then the big trick is a lot of people have those piping bags, you know, those for piping frosting. I do not. So all you got to do is get a Ziploc bag and cut a little corner at the side of that. Put your mixture in and then squeeze it out. And then at the end, just decorate the plate. Again, I threw some spring onions on the plate there. And I didn't think we were going to. We scooped them up, didn't we, Phelim?
Yes.
Did you like them?
They were very tasty. They were very tasty. We should have munched them a whole night.
Oh yeah, I would totally do them again. So I think they're a great. As I said, if you have company coming and in an emergency, what home, by the way, what home anywhere doesn't always have bacon? I always have at least 2 pounds of bacon.
What happens if you don't have Dijon mustard? What happens if you're not like the Obamas? You don't like your Dijon.
If you don't have Dijon mustard, you could use any kind of mustard. And in fact, you could use that powdered Coleman's English mustard would be very, very nice. And by the way, there's all kinds of things you could do. If you didn't have mustard at all, you could put in some sriracha in there. You could put in just in the Tabasco sauce in there. It's whatever is your taste. You can think about, you want something creamy. I would actually put in a little bit more Tabasco than I put into ours because it'll squeeze out of the bag a little easier. But anyway, gorgeous. You can't actually really go wrong.
No.
I would think that's the answer to the whole thing.
Okay.
Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And the other thing I meant to mention at the very end of this show is to say to you that Bill Maher, who I know people would have plenty of things to say about Bill Maher and not like Bill Maher, and of course he's got plenty of language, but his recent show I would highly recommend. Now, it's full of a lot of language, so we're not going to play it here, but I will put the link up on the notes.
Well, let's just play a little clip of it, right?
Let's play a tiny little clip of it to give you a flavour of what he said.
Okay, play it there, Colette.
And finally, new rule, blind hatred of America is just as blinkered as blind love. And we Americans should really get some perspective about where we live. Watching the go down in Afghanistan, I was reminded lately of every conversation I've ever had with an immigrant, almost all of which, if we got to really talking, included the notion, oh, you people have no idea. All you do is bitch about and badmouth your own country, but if you knew about the country I came from, you'd stop on your own.
Okay, that's just a little flavour, but actually
watch the whole thing.
Watch the whole thing.
It's really good.
It's funny and it's good,
and it's spot on.
And
it's absolutely spot on.
If you don't like salty language, don't listen.
If you can
handle
that, it's well worth listening to.
Okay.
And we've come to the end of the show. Thank you very much, and we will be seeing you very soon. Of course, we've got the Labour Day weekend coming up, and I hope everyone has lovely plans.
Busiest day of the year.
Busiest day of the year. We used to always hear about the Labour Day weekend. The first time I heard about the Labour Day weekend was Jaws, because they wanted to close down the beach on Labour Day weekend. And it's like, no.
Funny, I've been saying that for years, right? We've been saying that for years. I think I saw that clip from Jaws recently because the woman who was in it.
And it was 4th of July.
It was 4th of July.
Are you sure?
Yeah, not 100% sure. I think we've been saying Labour Day, you can't close the boardwalk on Labour Day. It's the busiest day of the year. And I think, because the woman died, the woman whose son was killed by the shark died. And anyway. So
Thanks
I think,
for that, Phelim.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you
Pedantic
next time.
Corner.
Yes, we'll see you after the
Labor
Labor Day
Day
weekend.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have
Bye.
a great weekend. Bye.
Bye.